Greetings and welcome to the Real FERM podcast. This week we've got a new little tidbit morsel of another potential footage of potential NHI extra-dimensional types of phenomena, this time from the Australian Outback, brought to us once again by the great people at NewsNation and Ross Coulthart in the Reality Check series over there. So I'm going to get into that, and not a super groundbreaking thing as much as the Jake Barber thing drop was, but this one kind of gets us back into the third weirdness of these UAP things. And that is the interdimensional, extra-dimensional, trans-dimensional, whatever you want to call it, hypothesis or actual reality, however you want to look at it, of what these things may be. And we're going to get all up into that, react to some things that the doctor, this man is an actual science educator, and he uses the scientific method. It's a nice, refreshing tone of speaking on the subject while also directly dealing with it, coming from a specifically scientific background and analyses. Let's get into it. All right. Dr. Andrew Morgan makes an appearance for interview remotely via video call with Ross Coulthart of NewsNation on the Reality Check series of whatever you may call it, journalistic documentation of interviews, and talks about rods and orbs that he has video of, mostly in the infrared, and it appears to, the way what I recall him saying is that it originated from, I guess, folklore. I don't know if it was folklore per se, but the Aboriginal indigenous communities in that area were describing and had this oral history tradition. What I may be using the wrong terminology, but that's where kind of like, we see the spirits in the sky kind of thing, and then it led him to look into this from a more data collecting scientific standpoint, and he found a lot of interesting things. Both photographically and coming to his own insights into it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And this is specifically on the extra-dimensional thing, which last week I mentioned, if nothing new had come out, that I would get in. I was tapping into that a little bit towards the end of last week with the whole Stephen Greer's definitions of the three types of the human-made, back-engineered stuff, the extraterrestrial stuff, and then the extra-dimensional, trans-dimensional, whatever stuff that is something else, I guess. So yeah, that's seems to be, as you will see as I get into reacting to some of these clips that I've pulled from the interview. Hopefully this time it doesn't get blocked for copyright. I'm going to do my best to pull the video and put it into the frame and not play long durations of it without reacting to it, so that doesn't happen, and bring in to cover up some of this blah background I'm on here, because I ain't got no damn money, and this is what it is. So, Dr. Andrew Morgan. First of all, he's a good, he comes from a very seemingly humble origin in terms of his status, not to denigrate his, he doesn't boast a huge following. Doesn't seem to have any profit incentives like people may accuse Dr. Greer or Lou Elizondo or whatever, potentially Jake Barber, these people of. This guy he's just doing a study, and he came across these things, and Ross and NewsNation found him, picked him out, and did an interview with him. But that makes me think of, I think, I am. I'm going to go on a quick rant tangent of this whole because all these damn subreddit notifications that pop up, and I click on them, and the r/aliens in particular. This maybe it was in UFOs or UFOB, whatever. Just the people, detractors, super skeptics, just bugging out about. I think the one that triggered this thought process in my mind was somebody, they saw they had watched a more recent interview with Lou Elizondo in it. I think it was the Area 52 guy, which he's got an awesome channel with some awesome interviews, especially that latest one with Chris Bledsoe, who I haven't really talked about on this humble program of mine, but highly recommend. If you don't know about Chris Bledsoe, the Area 52 channel, I think that's what, Area 52. I believe that is what. Anyway, Lou Elizondo went on there before Chris Bledsoe, the week or two before, and I think that's what this Reddit guy was referring to. Anyway, he was just going off like, I'm sick of the way he talks, and he's selling his books and his pot. He just made a whole point that everyone else makes of these people that refuse to accept any open-mindedness about this sort of thing, because it shatters their worldview or whatever, and the easiest thing is they're making money off these grifters, and this is what comes to my mind. Okay, so first of all, I'm sorry, have we forgotten that we live in a capitalist society? Does everyone doing something important that garners attention has to abstain from all profits and monies? This is insane. When somebody dedicates the majority of their time and effort into something in particular, like UFOs and government cover-ups, but even beyond that, any sort of passion and interest, you have to profit off of it, because especially in the UFO thing, or just anything that is such a deep topic with decades of information and confusing, convoluted topics, if you want to communicate that effectively or research it, whatever, you have to dedicate the majority of your time to it, for anyone to to realize that you know what you're talking about, unlike myself. But that there's a reason why I don't claim to know anything about these. But so you do that. You can't just be working a 9-to-5 job, making the honest working wages, whatever you want to call it, while doing this other thing. Okay, now most of these guys come from the military, so they have money to, they don't really need to work, so to speak. So you could say, oh, well, they're just trying to get more money while living off their pension, whatever it is. But regardless of the first of all, the vast majority of detractors on the internet, especially Reddit, who call out people as grifters very quickly without much evidence other than just the way they talk and the fact that they have a book or they're on podcasts. these people have no perspective outside of I go to work, I earn my money, I go home, I relax the few hours that I have of free time, and then I wake up the next morning and I go do it all over again. I get a little break on the weekend, but the concept of not earning money beyond that is a foreign thing, and again, vast majority of humans everywhere live this life very respectable. I've done it. It's it's an honorable way to earn money. It is the most common way to earn money, and you have to do it because that's the only way. That's the only option you have. Whatever the reasons are. But and added to that, most of those people are annoyed. They're jealous. They're envious. They see people who are doing things that either seem easy or seem fun, or they're making money off of researching a topic that they're deeply interested in, and they're getting fame and recognition. So you see these people and you're like, well, fuck these guys. They're making all this money from talking about UFOs. They must be lying. So I think there has to be something going on there psychologically. People, you work a thankless job for a humble living, and then you see someone talking about the most wild, extraordinary, outlandish stuff, and they're making money off that. Not to mention, you don't even really know how much they're making. You just know they're getting some sort of proceeds from it, whether it be from book sales or what have you. And then they jump to the conclusion that earning profit in the public eye in this way equals you're lying. Because, understandably, that has happened many times in the past, sure. Many examples, no need to point out any specific ones. But again, that's not, that argument in and of itself doesn't render it impossible for them to be lying for profit in this case. But you don't want to make the logical fallacy of just jumping to the, because this, after this, because what's post hoc ergo, something like that. Anyway, but again, there's no proof that they're not lying or they are lying just to get the money. I think that's more outlandish because of the amount of detail they go into. If it is for profit, I think it's something far more insidious and deep than just being a grifter. I think it's a very naive and simplistic view of what people like Lou Elizondo are doing, if they are doing it not in the interest of true disclosure and revealing the truth. But again, you don't suddenly, when you decide to set aside any other, and especially in this case, when you come out and speak about things like this, you pretty much pigeonhole yourself into that profession for the rest of your life because of the way it makes you seem to the rest of the world, majority of people who think you're crazy, just like the government wants. You don't suddenly, just because you're pursuing what you're passionate about or you're interested in, the government doesn't say, oh, we see your hard work about this, we're going to give you a check for, doing what you love to do. God, I wish that was the truth. I wish that was the case so I wasn't fucking broke. But, you have to figure out how to make money when you're doing something that takes up all your time that isn't a standard job. This is how people on YouTube make money. This is how literally anyone that's not working a regular job makes money. It's very fucking simple. If you're compelled to share information, it makes sense, furthermore, for you to write books and do podcasts about it, because that's how you get the information out there. Yes, it just so happens that when those become popular, you do make a significant amount of money, which may cause some people to become envious. But that's just the way it goes. It's a logical thing to do. I need to get this message out. Let me write a book about it. Oh, it just so happens that people are fascinated with it and it's sold 1 million+ copies. Whoop-de-doo. What a great coincidence. And yeah, this sort of thing can get taken advantage of course. And not just lying for profit, but in the sense of maybe people like Lou Elizondo initially were, or not that he changed his mind about things, but he came out about it and then got comfortable with the money he was making from the publicity, and then kind of stopped going as deep as he could and just was sitting pretty with I'm making money off this now. Now I can just kind of chill and live my life without having to lose my mind over this UFO topic. That could happen too, I don't know. But again, just because they're making profit doesn't mean they're lying or grifting. And then, if you put yourself into their shoes, if you're one of these people that thinks this way, if you decided or you were forced, in some cases, like if you're just straight up divulging secrets that you promised the government that you promised you wouldn't tell, if you were forced to decide to quit your job to pursue your passion, would you not find a way to monetize your passion? You can't just keep living your life. Even if you became significantly wealthy and then got to quit your job and pursue your passion, usually you have some sort of quality of life you're trying to uphold. You got, even if you own your house, you own your cars, whatever, there's still insurance payments, there's still taxes, all of these recurring things, costs of living that you have, feeding yourself, feeding your family, if you have kids that you're still raising. So it blows my mind that people are so quick to just say grifter because of he's making money. It's so fucking naive. Now again, could it be possible? Yes. Not saying it. It annoys me that people are so, without knowing that they're lying, and then they say it. It's I like, if I was in Lou Elizondo's shoes and somebody was saying that about me, and I knew like what I was doing was real, or I believed in it, I would want to, yeah. Anyway, I'm sure he's used to it by now, but I've ranted a little too long. But to put a cap to that rant, do you really expect? Do you want all your whistleblowers and your UFO researchers to live in abject poverty while they research and to spread their message under a bridge? Yeah, just let's live in the real world, okay? As we talk about things that should not exist in the real world. Lovely, fun paradoxes. Okay, back to Dr. Andrew Morgan, who, all going back from where that tangent came from, who is almost certainly has no profit motives whatsoever. He seems like a humble scientific educator, and stumbles across this phenomenon in the Australian Outback via the Aboriginal community. And there's these two things, orbs and rods, and apparently so he tracks them with thermal images, with thermal imaging, thermal photography, whatever you want to call it, because that's the best way it can be seen, which is an interesting thing, which they talk about and we'll get into as well. But one of the more specific things about his, what he says is that he had a full journal article that they wrote up, and the peer review committee wouldn't accept it based on the main thing was because their footage wasn't in, they didn't have a high-speed camera, which is extremely expensive. I guess they just couldn't afford it. But yeah, it's because they didn't have like 1,000 FPS, but instead was like 30 or 60. I forget what it was, but very far from 1,000. is to get that slow-mo, smooth, frame optical flows situation when you're analyzing the footage. That was the reason it couldn't be peer reviewed. So I find that kind of fascinating. I don't know. I mean, I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's like that's the only. But like everything else is good. So anyway, I'm not sure if I have that part in. I have like 7 clips from it. I'm not sure if that particular part is it, but if you're really interested, do go watch the NewsNation reality check on it. I'm going to now begin to play them. But first, because this all comes back to my fascination with Dr. Stephen Greer and his hypotheses and theories and knowledges. Let me play this clip from his one of his appearances on Vlad TV, DJ Vlad. Not the best interview situation in terms of the whole Vlad TV. Not that, no offense to Vlad or anything, but it's just, I don't know why I brought that up. The point is, Dr. Greer says something very interesting in this that he says in other instances, but I just happened to be watching this most recently related to this topic, so I pulled this clip. This is what he says about the extra-dimensional aspects.
By the way, people bring up things like Bigfoot and what have you. One last category of strangeness I haven't discussed that's also gets thrown in here in the blender of confusion, the great scrambled huevos of our brains, is the things like that are actually interdimensional. So there are phenomena that are emerging from other dimensions that occasionally interface with this dimension of 3D space-time, and people will call them alien, but they're not. So this is a little more of a nuance, but since you brought it up earlier, I thought I'd provide that point of clarification. A lot of people will see something like that, and there is evidence for stranger things, right? And those can be from another dimension, but they're not extraterrestrial.
So before I continue on that, I do want to kind of define or try to define this extra dimensional thing. So he's making a distinction that there's extraterrestrial phenomenon that's actually from an actual biological originated consciousness from another planet, solar system / galaxy, far, far away. And then there is this other thing that can be confused, which is just extra dimensional. And then it has to do with also the extraterrestrials use this extra dimensional, transdimensional medium to traverse distances and whatnot. So there's a little bit of an overlap, and it's very confusing. But what I want to try to explain or go into briefly before we get further into the specific topics is the concept of extra dimensional, transdimensional, whatever you want to call it. People use this term a lot, from another dimension and all this. And I'm not sure most people understand what they're saying when they say that, or I don't know if Dr. Greer is speaking on it in the specific way that I understand it, or that most people from the scientific community would understand it, and that is in the physics mathematical way, which is the literal dimensions of the space, the vector space of where you're working in or existing in. Obviously, you should know this, but we exist in three spatial dimensions, and then you can add the fourth, the time dimension. Dimension is just simply is it basically an axis of measuring points across a abstract measurement. In literal space, yes, there's 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, and then the time dimension you can't see, but it is moving along a line that's real but not really. So when you talk about extra dimensions, now you have like string theory, which literally mathematically proposes 9, 10, or whatever it is, actual spatial dimensions that are curled up into the string at the most fundamental quantum level of reality, if that theory is actually real or describes reality. So I wonder if, because he uses the term from another dimension or through another dimension, is it like the fourth, there's a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, etc. spatial dimension that these things exist in, and then they are projected into our three-dimensional world that only we can perceive because we've evolved to only perceive the three spatial dimensions that we exist in, and we can't conceive of any higher dimension. So when something weird shows up and then disappears, it's like, oh, it was in a fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever dimension, and then it casts its shadow onto our dimension, and then it popped out. But then you'll hear him say, and other people say, it came from another dimension. And I feel like most people hear that and they think like another realm, like another universe or something. It's very convoluted. I don't know. I think he means literally another spatial dimension. And then that opens up for a whole bunch of philosophical ponderings of, well, is there other universes that just exist in other spatial dimensions? How are they connected to our three spatial dimensions? And that's that. I mean, a pure mathematician would be better at conceiving of this, because it's almost impossible for any human to try to imagine even a fourth. There's all kind. You can Google like 4-dimensional cube, and there'll be like a 3-dimensional image, or actually a 2-dimensional portrayal of a 4-dimensional cube projected into 3-dimensional XYZ axis. It's just so hard to comprehend. So I guess it's just an ethereal concept. Let's get back to hear what he's saying.
But here's where you get the crossover confusion. To go from point A to B, they are dropping out of linear space-time and traversing other dimensions. So some of the phenomenon that's extraterrestrial looks very, very close to something from another dimension. Almost like poltergeist or what have you. So all of this has to be, I wrote a whole section of one of my books on extraterrestrials and the new cosmology, that we sort of need a new cosmological order and phyla and understanding to be able to distinguish between man-made stagecraft, extraterrestrial, and other, let's just call it weird stuff and strange stuff. But what we live in a time where people don't want to exert the intellectual discipline to do that nuancing, and they just lump everything together.
The weird stuff, that's my biggest question. If I had got a chance to talk to him, would be to expound upon the relationship between the weird stuff and the actual extraterrestrials that you describe as being very real. Like, it is, to me, I immediately jump to simulation theory or whatever. That's like, there's some other wild shit going on that or either simulation or multiverse things, where it's like, okay, so if we have Dr. Greer's ETs that inhabit our universe as we know it in this universe, not in any multiverse or any other dimension, just our universe. And then you have like another. So what's the other dimension? And is it just a whole nother existence that I mean, yeah, I don't know if I want to keep going down that mental road right now because it's just leading to a complete mindfuck. But yeah, I don't really know. He just describes it as weird stuff and strange stuff, and goes back to I briefly brought up last week where I referenced when he talked about the apparently someone who worked in a secret top secret lab where there was a device that ported things from other dimensions, and there was a scary monster that popped out of nowhere and ran around the lab. So I don't know what to think about that. But now this brings us to the main topic, which is Dr. Andrew Morgan. I think, that should be his name. And what he's seen and how he ties it to this same concept of extra-dimensional stuff. But let's start from the top here. The orbs and the rods and how they are intelligent, apparently, according to his observances.
Can you explain why you think these orbs and rods are intelligently responding to you?
Yeah, because we've got a huge archive of video footage and done extensive analysis and frame-by-frame analysis and video clip analysis in a radial manner around the cardinal directions. And we found that they demonstrated object avoidance. So that's whether that was an obstacle, they would turn on a dime, instantaneous acceleration as well. So some of the 5 observables. Camera recognition or being filmed in infrared, they would come into the field of view and then turn and try and move out of it pretty quickly as well.
So right off the bat, you see in this clip where he's got this slide and lots of detailed analysis of the data and the methodology of studying it and capturing it. So very, very good on you for scientific sciencing and measuring and observing. Right off the bat, that gives him kind of a good credibility to most of even the more stringent of skeptics. Stringent? Sure. Perhaps the wrong word, but he very thorough. And then he's talking about how they show these intelligent signs in terms of how they reacted to being observed, kind of in a quantum, hearkening to the quantum observer effect kind of thing, but not really, but in that kind of, if you want to refer it to something that's more rigorously scientifically proven. These things are moving around. They're capturing them on infrared, and they're reacting to them being captured, which is very fascinating. Let's see what he has to say more about the potential intelligence of these orbs and rods, specifically the orbs here.
And then I found in one very interesting one where I was filming an orb and trying to track it as it moved up into the sky. I would move to the left or right or up and down with it, and then it would move very quickly backwards and forwards as if it was making fun of me trying to track it. So there's
a trickster quality to this phenomenon.
Yeah, there was a trickster, and that's been mentioned in other studies as well. So there was that. So there's object avoidance. There was some of the 5 observables. There's avoiding the camera, avoiding the observer.
Trickster qualities, object avoidance, or whatever he said. You know what I'm saying. You just heard it. I just immediately forgot the exact phrasing. And this kind of, and it just reminds me again back to what Greer said earlier in the clip I just played about the poltergeist thing. It kind of starts to give the vibe of ghosts and classical paranormal phenomenon, spirits. You see them and then they're like, whoa, you saw me. And this is coming from a guy that's studying this scientifically. It's very fascinating. It's a nice another layer of different perspective, different point of view, confirming the same type of behavior and phenomenon that the same people who many call absolutely insane, a la Stephen Greer, and all the way to just a humble Australian scientific educator describing the same things in different ways, but what seems to be fundamentally the same phenomenon, these orbs in the Outback. Now, he describes the differences between the orbs and the rods.
So the rods have extreme velocity, instantaneous acceleration, turn with no inertia.
So you can see there the thermal imaging of the rods, and the rods are instantaneously accelerating. They're very when he says rods, it's at least from what I'm seeing here, it's a rod type of shape morphology, but it's kind of squiggly and it's zipping around. Yeah, again, when you look at these things, like this is the type of, especially the orbs as he's about to get to, but these are the types of, it makes me think of the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators who go into haunted houses and they see like artifacts of, well, artifacts is more of a skeptic term, but perhaps they are, but either way, these like light phenomena in thermal night vision, whatever, cameras, and then they say there's a spooky spirit. Anyway, let's see what he says about the orbs.
And predominantly the rods move in straight lines. We did see them avoid objects, but the orbs were more erratic. So they were slower, still quite fast, slower, turned without inertia, but they tended to investigate more. So there was different types of orbs. There were orbs that didn't seem to investigate what was around them.
Orbs that investigate what's around them. So again, going back to the potential intelligence of these objects, if you want to call them that, investigate what's around them. That is a fascinating way to put it. They're more erratic and they're kind of floating around, poking around, like what could these be if they are in fact real things? Lots of questions come up. And he does, we'll get into the later clips, the last couple, he does touch upon potential explanations, in particular, this more supernatural, religious-esque things. But yeah, it's pretty wild.
And there were orbs that just moved through the field of view. And the ones that investigated were able to turn instantaneously, no inertia. So all of these objects were able to overcome inertia and demonstrate some of the 5 observables.
And he brings up the 5 observables, which is a big thing Lou Elizondo hammers down in his message about when to, discern what you're seeing is, if what you're seeing could be a natural or conventional natural explainable thing. Wild stuff. Let's just keep going. So this is where he starts to conjecture, speculate about extra dimensional stuff here.
You know what I find amazing about this, Andrew, is if what you're saying is right, and if you can exclude the probability that these are artifacts inside your camera that are doing these effects, you've found another form of life.
Yeah, I did talk to Dr. Tyson about that, because one of the things with the life form extension, and I said, well, do you think it's sentient as an intelligent organism, and not just like an animal as intelligent, but actually capable of thought or thinking or some level of consciousness. But what he did say, and what I thought was, if this is a temporal anomaly, it could also be a silhouette of something that we don't have the full manifestation of in our own dimension. So we've been looking at that as well.
Eric, there it is. The silhouette, the shadow of the extra-dimensional entity. By extra-dimensional meaning it exists in spatial higher dimensions beyond the three that we know: height, width, depth. And then make up your own names for the 4th, 5th, and 6th and beyond. And then it projects in for whatever the mechanism would be, where it's moving around and it sneaks into the... So a good kind of thought experiment that you probably, if you've ever been interested in this topic before, I'm sure you've came across this in the past, but in case you haven't, I might as well touch upon it. The whole what do they call it? Like 2D world or something, Flatland. It's like a mathematical. I think it was used for education of when you start studying dimensions in mathematics, like just the pure mathematical form, and just trying to get a more intuitive conceptual understanding of what it means to exist, the perspective. Okay, so you have like a two-dimensional creature in an XY plane, and it can only go left and right, up and down, and that's it. And then you have a cube, or just say a sphere for simplicity, a sphere, completely symmetrical all around, and it comes, and if it crossed the plane of the so let's say this is the, all right, so you have the guy that's going up and down, left, right, and then you have a sphere, and so this is where the guy is playing around, he's dancing around, he's jumping around, he's moving around left and right, up and down, and then there's a sphere over here, and this is the orb, okay, and then the guy, and then he's having a good time, and then the sphere is over here in its three-dimensional world, and it can move around over here, and then as it moves in the dimension that is invisible to the two-dimensional man who's in this XY plane over here, if you're just listening to this, sorry, but yeah. And the sphere, and it starts moving in the Z direction, perpendicular to the plane which the two-dimensional 2D man lives, and then it crosses the plane. As it crosses the plane, it creates the projection of itself into it, and then once it hits this plane, he's like, what the fuck is this circle that I'm seeing? There's a circle. All of a sudden there's a circle, and then it moves past through the plane, the circle disappears, but the sphere, the orb, is still existing that way in the Z direction. The 2D man, what he saw was he's dancing around, and then he sees a circle. Why? I mean, technically, if he can only see like in one direction, so he's actually seeing just a line, I guess. Yeah, so, but again, this is a big mind fuck, but if you're just observing it from my point of view, you would see a circle imprinted, projected onto the plane, and then as it moves through completely, the object, and if its entire volume passes through, which, by the way, volume was no concept to this two-dimensional man. And then in that case, so in these higher dimensions, beyond 3D, there would be there would be quantities of density beyond volume. I don't know what you would call them. Maybe there's some mathematical terms for that, for four-dimensional density of some kind. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's so. So these orbs are some. So just back to the extra dimensional concept. Entities of conscious intelligence that exist in 4, 5, 6, whatever dimensions. And so they can, just like the 2D man only exists on this plane, and there's an orb over here flying around, but he can't see it until the orb passes through his dimensional plane of existence. We are here on a 3-dimensional plane of existence, and if there's some interdimensional being floating, just traversing in their 4th and or 5th plus dimensions, and then they cross over into our 3-dimensional. It's not a plane. It's again, this is where it gets beyond our language, but whatever the analogy of the 2-dimensional to the 3-dimensional, here would be the 3-dimensional to the 4 plus dimensional. That object crosses over into our 3-dimensional world, and then we see a 3-dimensional projection of what is a 4 plus dimensional object. Something like that. I don't know, but that's the best way I can try to understand it. Let's continue with the clip.
So this is doing my head in. So you guys are theorizing that where you were filming in the Pilbara Desert, Karanjini National Park, there might be some kind of interdimensional portal that this life form, these orbs and rods, are coming through. And just to get my understanding of what you've just said, the reason why sometimes they appear translucent rather than solid is because they might only be partially in this dimension. There might be shadows of themselves from the other dimension.
Before he answers that question, I just want to go back to where he said portal and to think about what that could mean. Back to my initial, before I started playing these clips, of how I was trying to formulate some kind of explanation as to how extraterrestrials could be using the higher dimensions to travel through space, what we perceive as space-time, 4-dimensional space-time, the 4th dimension being time, without using the speed of light, just to go through the 3 spatial dimensions in conventional velocity terms and acceleration. This concept of a portal, I guess wormholes, bending space-time, all of this is kind of explained by general relativity and hypothesized and then brought to fictional life via sci-fi. So, like Ross is saying, is there some kind of portal in this area? And that kind of opens you up to ideas of when, just to go back to the poltergeist ghost thing, when certain places are haunted or something, quote unquote, there's some kind of rift in dimensions because of the extreme conscious memorial energy. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I don't know where I was going to go with that, but that's just for the purpose of splitting up the clip so I don't get full copyright blocks again. Just a little speculation. Let's continue. He's answering the question of he's about to answer Ross's question there about the speculation.
Yeah, that's one of the theories, one of the several theories we've got, and I called it the looking glass effect because when I was filming, there was this perfectly still night. There was no wind, no breeze, no fog, no clouds, no fog coming up from the ground. But there was this haze quite a few times through the footage, and it's not there when you're looking around. And in it was what I call ghosting orbs. That, it was sort of translucent, and then there were the solid ones that would come out of that and be moving off and around. So that was,
You say solid. Were they solid objects, do you think? Do you think you can say definitively that they were solid objects?
That's no. I wouldn't say that we've come to that conclusion, because we don't know whether they're plasma, whether they've got a structure to them underneath that. Because I said to Brian, what if they're actually harnessing the energy that's around them and not creating it themselves?
0-point energy, Stephen Greer theory. Not solid. Harnessing the energy around them. Translucent. All of these things. More questions. Let's continue.
But plasma itself is a solid because it shows up on radar sometimes, doesn't it?
Okay, so this is where he's just straight up wrong. Actually, Andrew's about to answer this, and I'll continue what I'm about to say after.
Yeah, if we had the technology and some more instrumentation, because that's one of the things brought up about our research papers is understanding more about not just the morphology of these objects, but the underlying structure and how that plasma is generated. So whether they're generating it internally or externally, yes, it's still a fourth state of matter as a light ball or a rod with a plasma around it.
Plasma around it. Okay, so he's I guess that was just raw. I forgot. I was thinking maybe Dr. Andrew Morgan was saying, but yeah, he said solid because plasma is by definition not a solid. I just wanted to make that distinction. The fourth state of matter being it is in terms of energetic and entropy states, solid is the most low energy. It's tightly bound. There's a lot of energy in the object that is solid, and then as it moves to a liquid or a fluid, which is liquid and or gas, it becomes more fluid, for lack of a better term, less bound, and takes on less of a shape. And then gas, it's just a bunch of particles. It's still in a system, but it's floating around. And then plasma is highly energetic in such that it's no longer just atoms. It's actually ionized soup of charged particles busted up into the plasma, which is this fourth state of matter that they're talking about. The plasma, not like blood plasma, or this is a physical concept. So it is not solid, and but to Ross's point, he I think what he meant was it's solid as in it's giving off like it's not invisible. It's emitting energy and whatnot. Speaking of physics stuff, this next part gets even more into the deeper, more physicsy stuff. Let's hear what they have to say.
Can I just ask this, for a bear with a very small brain, if light is light, those orbs are clearly some kind of light or energy or plasma. Do you agree?
Yeah. There is some kind of energy there, light ball, plasma, some form of energy.
Why can't we see them on anything other than infrared?
This is where I put forward to Dr. Tyson the energy cascade hypothesis within an interdimensional anomaly, is that to go from invisible to infrared to the visible spectrum requires a certain amount of energy to manifest in physical space. So I put forward that as a theory, and I think Teodarani talks about this too, that the level of energy required to be in the infrared spectrum and the visible spectrum is different. So, and if they're harnessing energy externally, which is another model we put forward, not generating it themselves, then they're totally dependent within that temporal anomaly on available energy and energy cascades as to how intensely they manifest. So I'm recording them in the 850 nanometer spectra, and it may simply be that the intensity of energy required to manifest in the light visible spectrum is not enough.
So do you need more or less energy to show in infrared than you do in visible light?
I'm still researching this, but I think in terms of energy cascades, it's more. So I think,
really?
I think because, I'll have to go and do some more research on this.
Okay, so I'm not sure if he's confused or if this theory he's talking about is, and relating to this phenomenon, perhaps he's thinking it in a more profound way that I'm simplifying it in. But as the diagram that he just showed conveys, and as is very well known and accepted, the electromagnetic spectrum, objectively visible light is more energetic than infrared. So, and he just said it's the opposite, not literally, but he said it would be more, they would require more energy to display in the infrared than in the visible, which doesn't make sense in a photonic sense. But I think he's just tripped up in this case, but also maybe there's some kind of mechanism or argument about the way that it is being, the way that the state of, I don't know. What I do know is when a body with a temperature emits, like a human body at human body temperature, which is 98.6 Fahrenheit or 30 degrees C, whatever it is. And that's not just human body, that's just any body of mass at that temperature, based on the Blackbody radiation concept, which is a fundamental reality of physics, is at that temperature, the highest distribution in the distribution of electromagnetic radiation, the Blackbody radiation spectrum. Blackbody based on, okay, I won't get into but at that temperature you emit infrared, which is why infrared the most out of the spectrum, out of the electromagnetic spectrum. The infrared is the most intense at the temperature of a human body. So if you're only emitting infrared radiation and not anything higher, if you're at a higher, Jesus Christ, this is hard to try to explain. It shouldn't be, but I don't know why. Maybe I'm trying to simplify it too much, but if you're at, so the sun is at like 5,000 Kelvin, I forget what the degree temperatures it's at, but the sun emits, I believe, green, around the green wavelength is the highest highest energy density, intensity of radiation that it emits. We see mostly yellow and red for atmospheric reasons, I think. I'm not sure. I might be getting that slightly wrong. It's all very complicated. But the point is, if the objects were hotter, they would emit visible radiation based on just the Blackbody radiation principle. So going back to the whole, would they need more energy to emit visible radiation? Yes, if it's just based on the heat, the temperature of the body itself. So I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to rack my brain thoughts about how that. But again, blackbody radiation isn't. It's the most simple way to describe a body of temperature that the radiation that it emits. But not everything that emits radiation is because of blackbody radiation. As in an LED light is lighting up not because it's hot and it's emitting electromagnetic radiation due to its heat. It's emitting very particular photons because of the electronic transitions in the semiconductor band energy gap, which is a whole nother thing. But sorry, I went too physicsy. My bad. Let's just scrap that. I mean, I'll leave it in, but sorry. Let's keep going.
So I'm still talking to Dr. Tyson about plasma and light ball and energy cascades within this anomaly, if it is a temporal anomaly, because it appears the more you move away from the site, the less of these objects there are. They still have the same intensity, but there's less of them. So where's the energy coming from for that number to manifest and concentrate radially around a certain area? And is that energy intensity, like you said, related to their ability to manifest?
Okay, now that's even more. I didn't really pick up. Obviously I watched this before, but now I'm more things are popping into my mind that I didn't really think to focus on before I pulled this up again. When they moved away from the site, the intensity of the emissions stayed the same, but there was less of them, less objects. This is wild. I'm kind of an idiot for not, first of all, just focusing on this as like right from the start of the recording. So apologies. I went on a rant about capitalistic gains from UFO researching, and then and whatnot, and Stephen Greer and Extra Dimensions. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot here, as I say in all these episodes. There's a lot, and unfortunately, I don't have the time and bandwidth to focus all of my thoughts and energy on this topic every day, leading up to the moment that I begin recording these. So apologies. But he's going back to this concept of where the energy is coming from, and could it be? It seems like he's implying there might be some 0 point energy situation going on. Let's see what he's saying here.
Are they choosing, or are they just choosing not to manifest visibly? Is there Dr. Tyson even talked about what he called consciousness, or the observer effect in quantum mechanics, is that you observe something and therefore it's matter, and when you're not observing it, it's a waveform. So there's that whole area of physics as well. Is the observer having an impact on the manifestation?
And one of the final questions, Andrew, do the things you see, the orbs and rods, do you only see them at night?
Yeah, but that's mainly because of the gear I've got. I do electric and magnetic field intensity right through day and night, but the infrared camera I'm setting up to film in infrared at night. So daytime, yeah.
Well, is it possible that they are showing themselves in the daytime? It's just you don't have the type of camera that could pick them up because the infrared would be lost against the daytime heat.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I think that's where, if we get into more field work and a proposal to develop this further with better technology, that we can set up sensor arrays 24/7 and look at the full spectrum, because we're very limited with 850 nanometer spectra and EM field intensity. What about the rest of the infrared spectrum, the visible spectrum, even the ultraviolet spectrum?
What would you need to be able to measure them during the day? High-speed cameras, hyperspectral cameras? What would you need?
We need hyperspectral cameras so we can do day and night alongside EM field intensity, and also the radar arrays as well to see if there is a signature from are they an actual object. So you've got the hyperspectral cameras, you've got your EM field intensity, you've got your radar array.
So consciousness, observer effect comes into play. He's positing, whatever the word is. And then at night kind of thing. Basically, he just goes on to say that because of the thermal and the magnetic, as you can see from this chart he's got up here, not chart, but collection of data points, the time, the trip, the different segments of trips, the amount of times he's tripped, the time of day versus night, and the value of the electric field and the magnetic field. He's documented all this with the inclusion of loss of signal due to calibration. Yeah, just once again, very, very thorough collection of data. But basically, he's saying because he needs thermal sight to see them. In the day, there's too much noise, extra thermal noise, because things are hotter during the day because of the sun, yada yada. So perhaps they might exist during the day, but he can't observe them with the cameras. Which kind of, I wonder if that translates to any other, just like observing with our eyes. But we don't see in the infrared anyway, so I guess that wouldn't really be applicable. Just going to the thought that most UFO sightings are at night. But that's also light pollution, visible light pollution in general, adds to the noise that our eyes detect when we are looking for distinct luminous objects in the sky. Versus over the night sky that is dark, of course. All right, let's actually let me see if there's anything else he says here.
I think we'd be getting a lot further along the track in terms of what is going on there. All we can say definitely is something is going on here. It's anomalous. It may or may not be naturally occurring, and there seems to be some form of intelligence attached to it. So we've written 3 papers on that, put forward our theories behind the data, suggested a way forward, and placed it in the context of the scientific literature globally, and in particular the Hestarden light research.
There you go. Put forth the papers and the studies. As I mentioned before, he does say that they were not accepted because of the lack of the high-speed cameras. But furthermore, in that segment, in that clip, he talked about needing more optical equipment to measure, and even radar, which is interesting, to detect potential solid radar signals coming back from what would be like metallic objects or anything else that would reflect radio waves. So yeah, I mean, going back to the whole money thing, this is not a guy motivated by money. He is in desperate need of grants, scientific funded, perhaps government-funded scientific research grants to help him. And which is back to my little rant about needing to be in the public eye and spreading the information to get money in another way of justifying why people do this is because you need funding to do these kinds of studies. Now, he doesn't have the funding yet. He's not making the money, but he's trying to get attention around it so he can do his honorable research, justified by his scientific integrity, which seems very much intact here. Finally, he talks about, as we'll wrap it up here, the religious interpretations, the paranormal, and how he kind of, as he said at the end there, what he knows is something anomalous is happening, and that's pretty much as far as he can conclude without further data. Let's see what he has to say here.
Is anyone else researching these orbs and rods around the world?
I've had there's anecdotal evidence from YouTubers, and there's also historically I've found on the internet people have written books on and called them spirits that have passed over. There's this whole that whole side of it too, and I stayed away from that. I said, look, there's a science to all this. Some people have connected these orbs to spirits or passed over spirits or the spiritual side of things, and I think there's a consciousness connection. But let's be scientific, and it's just because we don't understand something, let's not turn it into religion. Let's keep with the science and find out what the science is behind it all. And I allude to the fact that there's a missing branch of science in the public arena that I think other people are well aware of.
So I love that clip for multiple reasons. First of all, he talks about, he's very scientific about it. So again, that one's for all the hardcore skeptics. An example of someone who's dealing with this with an open mind, but at the same time applying the scientific method and acknowledging that there's more ethereal, arcane explanations for it, and rejecting the notion of just jumping to those conclusions. The whole let's not make a religion out of it. And then the fact, and then of course that we connect that to Stephen Greer and all that, and some claims that I've made myself and the things that I want to believe. But more importantly, the whole missing, like the whole link of the missing link of science, which is exactly how I always think now and have thought, that there's got to be some actual rigorous scientific explanation for these phenomenon that are clearly happening. We just don't know how to explain it yet, but we should be able to know how to explain it. Now, how far away from we are that, it could be very far off. It could be a lot more simple. I don't know. And he doesn't either, and which is why he's an awesome scientific gentleman here. And then relating the consciousness, he knows there's some consciousness connection. He's just not sure. Great, very rational and skeptical, but not overly skeptical to say, this is just my camera's bugging out. We don't know. We don't believe that this is even happening, kind of thing. It's a nice balance, a nice refreshing take. Now, one last clip, continuing on the missing science link, potentially.
So do you think some science is being actively suppressed by some in the scientific establishment, or is that too big a call?
No, I think yes and no. I think there's a naivety about it because you don't know what you don't know, and the ones that do know, it's maybe career ending or not a good idea. And then there's counterintelligence as well. So, because if you go back through and look at all the stuff that's been taken offline, and there's a stigma around it, people's careers have been altered, changed, or they've disappeared or not working on it anymore, and they're all in that area of research is rotating disk technology, counter rotation, field repulsion, and I've gone into Russian work and even torsion fields. A lot of the torsion field research is by Russian scientists in nature and in terms of technology application, and that's all connected to field repulsion science as well. So where is all the science? Why is it not in universities, in high schools, connected to special relativity and quantum mechanics? So where is it?
Because the big thing that fascinates me is even physicists like Eric Weinstein admit that there's a huge hole in modern physics.
Let's hit the pause button there. The great Eric Weinstein. Ross, you mispronounced it. He has no relation to Harvey. Eric Weinstein, who I brought up on this very series of podcast episodes several months ago, before I took the hiatus, where I had connected, I didn't connect him to the Terrence Howard thing. He came on Joe Rogan after the fact, and then with Terrence Howard, in this whole Eric basically giving Terrence Howard the how do you want to call it, the space of mind, the time to hear what he has to say and acknowledge that he has some brilliant insights, but at the same time he's acting like he knows everything, but he shouldn't, coming from Eric's more academically rigorous standpoint and origins and credibility and accolades himself. But Eric Weinstein, I have praised in my own mind as someone who is, much like Dr. Morgan here, is taking this stance of what something is missing in the scientific literature. And it's kind of strange, this whole thing of physics, is particularly, and what Ross is going to bring up, or at least he's just tangentially mentioning Eric in that way. But what Eric's big message was, especially on the Joe Rogan appearance, was that the physics community in particular, in the academic field, has been stuck for decades since like the last big revelation, pretty much. I mean, there's always great progress, but nothing that's like groundbreaking, nothing. And Eric believes that there's a nothing crazy like UFO stuff necessarily, but he believes that it's because that the academia community has, particularly in physics, has become a sort of political stagnation of we control that sort of just political tribal bullshit that's holding back true advancements. I think that's the way I remember it. I could be spinning it in a weird way that's not how he said it, but something along those lines. So, and then here we have Dr. Andrew Morgan. I hope I'm remembering his name right. I do not have the name in front of my face. The Australian bloke next to the other Australian bloke, Ross, or I think Ross might be from New Zealand. I don't know, one of those places, one of those Pacific whatever countries. Not whatever, they're great countries, but yeah, we have another scientific person saying something needs to be connected here. Let's continue.
That string theory doesn't work. It doesn't explain the known universe. We've got a huge problem with modern physics, and for much of the last 60 to 70 years, it's struggled to explain a unified physics theory that actually explains the whole universe. What do you think this field propulsion technology is exactly? Can you explain that to a layperson without making our heads explode?
Yep. It's key to make sure we call it field repulsion, not propulsion. So field repulsion, and it's all to do with go back to Maxwell's electromagnetic atom and spin, subatomic spin and electron spin. And everything spins, and when you generate an electric field from that, you generate a repulsion. So if you looked at Dr. Ningley's disk technology, same sort of thing, getting that spin technology to generate a repulsive field.
So this is all, what he's talking about is all very basic magnetic theory, essentially. The spin of particles creates a magnetic moment, which macroscopically creates a magnetic field. I'm not super or at all really versed in this field repulsion theory that he's talking about, but he's describing very, very simple principles. But he's relating it to something to do with spinning discs.
You go to Victor Schauberger's implosion drive spinning disc, again generating a field around it, which allows it to shoot up in the air instantaneously. And then Otis Carr, same sort of thing with field repulsion, so generating a spin and a repulsive field. So that seems to be where this gap is. But I think we need to have a conversation about the relationship between Einstein and Maxwell, because I've been researching this, and what happened to Maxwell's quaternion notation and scale of time, because I think it all started from there. Whether that was on purpose or inadvertently, because Heaviside turned it into vector calculus, and then Einstein got his special relativity from all of that. But Maxwell and Einstein knew each other.
Andrew Morgan knows his physics history, that's for sure. He's talking about the repulsion. I mean, he sounded like he was just talking about basic electromagnetic theory, but then referenced some specific studies by a name that I didn't recognize, causing instantaneous propulsion upwards, which is obviously anytime it's instantaneous, that's breaking some kind of traditional, conventional, unless he's saying instantaneous, like relative to what we can, it looks like it's instantaneous, but it's the speed of light. It's within the bounds of the speed of light. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I can't tell if I didn't deep dive super. I guess I should have. You know me, Mr. Unprepared. If he's like I just know it in the NewsNation thing. It described him as an educator. I don't know if his background is in physics per se, but he seems to know a lot about the history of the last century and a half of physics. Newton, not Newton. Newton too, I guess, but Maxwell and then Einstein. Let's see what he says wrapping up here.
So Einstein must have known about Maxwell's quaternion mathematics, because he was a genius mathematician and helped Einstein. So has that been taken offline? What happened to it? Why are we not talking about scale of time and field repulsion since then? And every time it has been brought up, it's disappeared.
So there's this makes me, I should have looked into this if I had caught that earlier. Some specific theory of Maxwell's, or maybe not proper theory, but some kind of paper he's referring to that nobody's talking about or has disappeared online, it seems he's talking about. I don't know what he's talking about. Perhaps this is a thing that people should be looking into. I couldn't fully understand. His accent is a little thick there. I'm not sure exactly what he said, but something about you can rewind and listen to it for yourselves if you're interested. But yeah, something about scalar time, some mysteries that he's saying have been hidden away. I don't know. I'm going to actually let it play out without interruption. Again, trying to make sure the copyright thing doesn't happen by, pausing the video and giving some commentary in between. Let's finish it out here.
So whether by design or oversight, a science is being suppressed.
I think so, and maybe there's good reason for that. But we're at a stage now where we can acknowledge that yes, you can hold on to the technology, but give us our science back, please, because we need to understand how the universe works. And I think understanding the fourth dimension is going to, in terms of what I've just talked about, is going to unravel or bring back what Eric Weinstein was talking about in terms of our missing science and understanding deep space travel and hopping around space and not moving through physical space to get to somewhere that takes hundreds of years to get to, because that's never going to happen. I think people are well aware of it.
All right. So he wraps it up in that clip, at least, with, I think that was pretty much towards the end of the interview, either way. The missing science that Eric Weinstein refers to, and hopping around through space time where it would normally take hundreds of whatever year, however much time, or it doesn't need to, this sort of thing. Part of me thinks that Eric Weinstein may be the next person that Eric is one of those guys he's a super theoretical physics, mathematical physics guy. And it's not surprising that if he is if he turns out to be another science community academic person that comes forward, that starts accepting and starts speaking about UAP, NHI, alien, anomalous phenomenon with more credibility, that he would be one of the last to finally come out without until he has a very solid argument and or evidence, whether it be just mathematical. And then even then, if that's all he has is just like some mathematical thing, he knows most general people are not going to understand it, just by principle of people not knowing advanced mathematics in that way. And also his peers in the academic world that will say, you're crazy for even thinking about that, you're condemned from our universities, this sort of thing. And that's what people like him are afraid of. And that's what he calls out in his whole missing science expose, idea, whatever you want to call it. So shout out to Dr. Andrew Morgan for bringing this to light. And of course, Ross Coulthart and NewsNation for bringing him on and having him talk about his thing. My camera light is blinking again, which means it is about to tell me it's overheating or something. This is once again super ghetto. It's what it is. I went longer than I expected, but that's a good thing because it means I thought more things and talked about and got interested in it as we went. Thank you for hanging on with me. If you're somehow still listening, I appreciate you. Peace and love. See you next time. Who knows what'll be on next? I don't know. I have a feeling something crazy might come out. Until then, look to the skies and summon your spirit guide.